thank you for spending your morning wanting to hear more about creative processes, meeting people who want to hear more about creative processes, and talk about making stuff. It's a pretty rad thing to do this early. I'm going to be speaking about the audio work that I do. Spoiler alert, the audio work that I do. But under the guise of serendipity, because that is the theme of this month. So, again, jazz hands. So I'm going to start where usually, give you a good baseline of the definition. The faculty or phenomenon of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. It's a very agreeable definition. So with serendipity, it's a lovely definition. It encapsulates how I've known serendipity to go. But also I think it lacks a lot. Like it's just saying like, oh, you stumbled upon this very thoughtful, wonderful thing that you didn't really know you needed, and it just magically appeared at the right time. I think that it does not just happen. Serendipity, you have to already be conscious. You already have to be on a path somewhere before a serendipitous moment shows itself. You have to be conscious of it. So some of the audio work that I do is I work at KALW, local public radio station. I'm an on-air host. I'm a board engineer. I produce the show The Spot there, which is basically DJing podcast stories. I also photographic memory. Thanks for the shout out, Rita. And I'm also the audio editor of Salon Mix for Salon.com, their new interview podcast. But I'm also a sound designer. I recently worked for Sfmoma, sound designing about 60 stops for their new permanent collection. Also, I sound designed for Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. And basically, I'm turning the artwork into 1-minute sound bites that are interesting, intriguing, and you can hear on your headsets when you're walking around. And I'm a DJ. I'm a DJ. I've been DJing bars around the Mission for 10 years, also the Mezzanine, weddings, and I work with a really great crew called Heart of Gold DJs now, based here in the Mission, women owned and operated. And so I do all these things. I probably spend 30% of my year literally wearing headphones, which I just realized when I was putting this together. And I'm also a good friend. I try really hard doing all this stuff, but that's another slideshow presentation, how to be creative and a good person and a great friend. So I use serendipity in all of these jobs as a tool because my jobs are about timing and they're about curation. Not just the literal, I'm curating stories or songs, but also make sure I'm playing the right sound at the right time for the right, whether it's an emotion I want people to feel, have an understanding of what a place is like, or just really understanding someone's words as they're talking about themselves and something important to them. I want to make sure I'm putting in the right words and the right sounds at the right time. And there's a lot of serendipitous moments that come into that, which I'll get into. So for today, I'm just going to talk about the storytelling and sound side of my jobs, and then sound design and how serendipity works in those areas. And also in a way that if you don't do audio or sound design, that you can take into any of your projects where you're needing to flex some creativity. So I'll start with the way I got into this career was actually like one of my most memorable moments of serendipity. I was a CalX DJ for about 5 years, and I really wanted to transition into figuring out how do I do this for a job? Like how do I make radio in 2012 for money? And I had advice from someone who was just like, you know what, you should just go into every radio station you think is cool and get a tour and talk to them, see how they operate, because every radio station is different. And I called KQED to get a tour, and I never heard back. I emailed KALW, and the general manager emailed me in 2 days and said, when do you want to stop by? So I went one day, and it just so happened that the producer of the morning show was really sick. And so the general manager was like, oh, I gotta produce this show while you're here. Do you mind sitting in? And I was like, no. I ended up writing all the notes, editing what went on the website for it. I ended up just going to work. But it was only because that producer was sick. And I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna do the work. I'm here on a tour. And I ended up meeting the news department heads who do the training program to basically teach people what I wanted to learn, which is how do you make a story for This American Life or Radio Lab? How do you make that kind of radio? And I left that office with an internship proposition. I ended up leaving my 9-to-5 job, pursuing it full time, and that was about 5 or 6 years ago. So for me, like, this story of walking into that radio station and just there being someone sick, I took that opportunity, and I made something of it. And I think that's, for me, how serendipity works best. It's you have the consciousness to recognize that there's this great opportunity that's a super positive, happy accident, but it's only an accident, like, unless you really embrace the happy part and roll with it and take that opportunity and do the next thing. If you're not paying attention when that moment comes of serendipity, you won't even notice it. So serendipity doesn't just happen to you. You have to realize it's happening and then decide to do something about it. And if you do notice it and you're not available to seize the moment, say you're too busy, you're not paying attention, you don't have space in your life to actually do that next thing that that moment inspires you to do or opens up for you, then what's the point? You have to take action. Thank you, Lex, for running these slides back there. So this is City Hall. I'm going to go into the storytelling part. One of the first stories I ever reported for KALW was taking place in City Hall. I got word that there was going to be a disrobing protest in City Hall chambers during the council meeting because Scott Wiener was putting forth this nudity ban in San Francisco. And This American Life was looking for pitches of things happening on December 5th, 2012. And I was like, I know something that's happening that's probably gonna have really good tape. And so they okayed me to go in and get tape. They didn't air it, but KLW did later on. And so I went into this story knowing, like, okay, I just needed to try to find something interesting, some sort of lens to show what's going on and make other people outside of San Francisco care about it and maybe also be entertained, like joyful, good radio. But I didn't really know how to do it. I planned ahead of time with my editors different ways it could go, but really you don't really know when you're reporting a piece how it's going to go until you go into the space. So why don't we hear a little bit?
It's about 15 minutes before the vote, and the chamber is packed. For the moment, everyone is fully clothed, but that could change at any time. Opponents of Supervisor Scott Wiener's proposed nudity ban plan to strip down if the final vote doesn't go their way. They're easy to spot in the crowd. Loose clothing, large robes hiding protest signs, and no bags that could be left behind when they're inevitably kicked out of the room.
In San Francisco, there are no surprises.
John Dodonna comes to every board meeting, nudes or no nudes.
Oh, I've been here 14 years, almost every week.
Dodonna is 81 years old. With his white cap, glasses, and plaid shirt, he looks like Junior Soprano, but more smiley and with a black cane by his side. He says he comes to the meetings
because I'm retired, and so I feel it's my civic duty to kind of stay aware of what's happening, be involved in what's happening in the city politically.
Oh, and
it was free. Free. You know what that word is? F-R-E. Not too many things free in this society anymore.
I take a seat next to Dodonna just as the meeting begins. The busy hall goes silent. Officers are posted in every corner of the room with stacks of blankets ready to censor even the slightest hint of genitalia. They don't have to wait long.
There are 7 ayes and 4 noes. The ordinance is finally passed.
There are naked humans everywhere we look. It looks like almost 2/3 of the crowd has disrobed. Security rushes to cover them as quickly as possible.
I knew it was going to pass. Well, there's a nice-looking body anyway. I wonder if you get to keep the blanket.
Officers remove the protesters. It's stunningly fast. The flashing mob is gone within just a few minutes.
Now the meeting gets dull and boring. That was the end of the excitement. And they're all gone. Then we're going to fall asleep.
Here's the thing, though. In San Francisco, the boring part of the meeting isn't always that boring. Like all city meetings, this one has a public comment period, Before I go, Didonna points out a few of the regular speakers.
Oh, there's our Bible thumper. You're not familiar with these characters. I'm one of them. But he's the guy standing up. He carries a Bible, and he gets up in 2 minutes and gives us a little sermon for 2 minutes.
Well, my text for today is found in the book of Romans. In due time, Christ died for the ungodly.
Then there's the singing guy.
He sings to the boy. That's his gimmick. He
But
sings.
there's no trying to get the city feeling again.
And they allow that, singing. So they're the most every day. I mean, they're here every week. Usually have been every week.
Just like John Didonna. For him, this is just another day participating in San Francisco's democratic process.
I think that the board, this is it. I mean, they should meet in the nude to attract the audience. That'll do it. So look around, look at the crowd we have. So it's a good suggestion. Put it in the suggestion box.
So I went in not knowing who I was going to talk to. I just knew I was going to have to record when the whole thing went down. But I was watching for 25 minutes, sitting out there, watching people interact, figuring out who I might be able to talk to and who I could. I didn't want to be the voice of this. I wanted there to be someone who is a regular to be the voice. And there was John, who just tapped me on the shoulder and just said, "What are you doing here? I've never seen you before." And I was like, "Oh, we're going to talk for a while. And you mind if I record?" He's like, "No, I don't care. I'm like 85. I'm like, "Please." So with storytelling, like making sure you're able to, like you're listening out, you're available, that you're looking for those people and those moments that kind of come to you. That's what makes radio sound serendipitous. When you hear a lot of radio stories on air, they're only going to put in the parts that make it feel very immediate, that make it feel really present. But I promise you, there's so much planning to like figure out what those moments could be, and also editing out other serendipitous moments that just don't work as well. Also, when I went to this meeting and I got to meet Walter Paulson, who is the singing council meeting man, who is a wonderful guy. He is there every meeting singing whatever comments he has about the fire department, about housing. He picks like a pop song and then rewrites the lyrics. It led to another story. I ended up doing a radio story about Walter Paulson as well several years later because I was there that day, I met him, and I realized I need to move forward on this. So serendipity plus action brought this, and some butts to Creative Mornings. Sorry. And so yeah, radio story is meant to sound serendipitous, but we plan ahead of time for those things. And just make sure you're pointing yourself in the right direction for where you want to go with whatever your project is. And those serendipitous moments will start popping up because they're the things you're kind of looking for without actually looking for them. If you're on that path, that's when they start popping up, when you start doing the work. So for Sfmoma, this was another moment of like, I can't believe I got this job. It just fell into my lap, but it didn't just fall into my lap. They said they were going to be doing the big retrofit, I got really excited because I was new to radio and I was like, I bet they're going to need an audio tour, and I would love to do that audio tour. I've been going here since I was a teenager, skipping school to go to Sfmoma, take the BART train. And so I was like, oh, I really want to be a part of that project, but I didn't know who was going to be doing the project, how I could get in contact with those people. And within 2 months after having those thoughts, I got an email, hey, I'm Christine Murray, I'm heading up the Sfmoma audio tour project, your name was passed to me, are you interested? I was like, it's great, yes. So I said yes, and I ended up working with them to do 60 stops for the relaunch, and I'm now in the middle of working on another 15. And with the Sfmoma project, we were trying to figure out ways for it to sound more like radio and more fun and more engaging rather than two voices telling you about a piece of art or an art curator kind of going on and on about the materials used, which is interesting to me, but also in a 1 minute, for a guest, it's not quite that great. So I was hired to help them figure out how to make it sound more radio and more fun and bring in other types of audio that aren't necessarily about the artwork, that help inform the artwork. And one of those was for this piece, Chamberlain's Coco Nino, which you can see there's me with it after listening to the audio tour. Thank you to my boyfriend for that photo. But then there's me recording it in a dump. We decided, how can we relay this piece that isn't just curators talking about it? So we ended up finding an artist, Jenny Odell, who was working in the dump in San Francisco on her own curatorial pieces of garbage as art, basically. And so we decided to do a dumpster dive in the recycling center and record it and try to make that into an engaging audio piece.
A moment now to talk about trash. Artist John Chamberlain scoured junkyards to find smashed car parts, scrap metal, and other materials to make sculptures like this. We thought we'd talk to a couple of local artists who've also worked with trash.
I mean, I'm really coming at it like if I was unfamiliar with the planet.
That's artist Jenny Odell. We met up with her at the San Francisco Recology Center, affectionately known as The Dump.
This piece by John Chamberlain probably reminds me more of being in the dump than anything possibly could, because it has these juxtapositions of things like a car fender and a washing machine that normally aren't very close together in your life, but are both made with metal. So he's done something to it that tricked you into looking at something.
Salad tongs, bean scoops.
Sculptor Nemo Gold has been scavenging in junkyards for years.
Standing in the presence of this piece, well, I see a lot of violence. I know those materials, and I know the forces that have to be in play to get them into that shape. That these things didn't just settle into that final form. A lot of energy was spent.
When I look at this, I just see something that refuses to go away.
From my eye, what's pleasing is to try to puzzle out how much of the artist's hand am I seeing? Did he do this? Is he just a bloody knuckle madman? Or was this that selection process where he had to discard thousands of alternatives before finding this perfect union of things?
And so there's Jenny Odell literally telling us how beautiful this disgusting football is. Because she brings her cart out, goes through the dump every day, finding objects that really light her up. And she's so excited. She's like, look at this form. What is, there's things flaking off it. Who used it? And we're just like, yeah, this is but this whole process on this Sfmoma project was we started with the artworks and coffee and bagels and in a living room looking at them and shouting out the first things we thought of, audio-based, visual-based, anything we just wrote everything down, captured it all, and then that helped us inform how we were going to write our scripts. And so with Coco Nino, it was one of those things, man, this looks like garbage. You just write the word garbage, and that turned into, let's go find some artists working with trash. And so if you notice, there's really nothing about John Chamberlain's process. There's no facts about how he made this piece in here. It's literally other people talking about it, which I thought was pretty cool. And so with this project, not just the brainstorming and really latching onto an idea that feels really great and like a happy accident, it's also, and when I'm sitting at home with headphones on and Pro Tools mixing these pieces for hours, I'm searching, part of the process, a big part of it is listening to music, listening to sound effects, listening to tape for anything to jump out at me. I have to listen to hours of stuff to find 2 minutes of what I'm going to use. And that is entirely I'm just waiting for serendipity to happen. I'm waiting for something to shout out saying, I'm the sound, I'm the sparkle noise you want. I'm like, you are the right sparkle noise. You're not the wrong sparkle noise. And that's just, you have to, for me, I feel those moments of serendipity in this process, but it's because I'm already looking. It's because I'm putting the work in, I'm on the project, it's on my mind, and I'm conscious when they happen, and I grab them, just grab them. So yeah, the more that you embrace your tastes, the easier it is to find those moments too. That's a big thing about curation, a big thing about audio production, a big thing when you're working on any of your creative projects. Your taste has to be a part of it, and once you really grasp onto that, all these great things will pop up of what you're looking for because you know what you want and what you like. So, it's only serendipity when you realize it. No matter what project you're working on, it's your acknowledgement. It's you saying that this is a really wonderful moment that you're going to do something with that makes it serendipitous. And you can't wait for it just to happen to you. You already have to kind of be in a mindset, on a path, whatever you're working on. You have to already be in that space for those things to come up because, random jobs just won't entirely or random ideas won't entirely fall out of the sky sometimes. If you don't capture them, they don't go anywhere. And even when something sounds or feels so polished and so perfect, so serendipitous, that's the opposite, so serendipitous, there's a lot of polishing that goes on in it. There's a lot of work behind the scenes. So most important, for you to be able, like, I'll put it this way, for me to be able to make the most, do all these things that I do, and be able to have moments of serendipity come up that I can really, that resonate with me, that feel amazing, that feel like this is something special and incredible, like a lightning bolt. It's really important that, oh, they put it up there already, nice. Most important, I was gonna say, is that you need to make sure you're available, but, so keep making, number one. Your viewpoint and the stories only you can tell are very much worth sharing, no matter what your project is, no matter your medium. Making space for your creativity and honoring that space for others is so important, because if people don't have the space to do it, if you're taking up their time without intention, that leaves them unavailable to have that space to find happy accidents, to make their things. It's really important to honor that. And be conscious, and serendipity will follow. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Ashleyanne.